The Simpsons Hit and Run, a classic game that defined a generation. You might remember playing it as a kid 20 years ago, but some still play it today. Simpsons Hit and Run has an active speedrunning community, a group of gamers who push the game to its limit, trying to beat it as fast as humanly possible. Look, this isn't Mario 64 or Super Metroid, but Hit and Run is its own unique thing. Speedrunners have poured thousands of hours into breaking it, and the result 20 years later is a shockingly deep speedrun. This is the story of how we got there. This is the history of the Simpsons Hit and Run World Records. And now, a word from this video's sponsor, Displate. Displates are metal posters that are super easy to hang on your wall. I personally own about a dozen of them. There are over 2 million artworks available, including many from your favorite gaming franchises. But the best part is how easy they are. If you're worried about having to drill holes, Displate solves that problem. They use a magnet mounting system that leaves no trace on the wall. If you get tired of one poster, simply swap it out for another in seconds. It's easy every time. And unlike paper posters, Displates stay vibrant and colorful without fading. If you want to upgrade your room, I'd recommend getting a few Displates. Use my link in the description, or just use the promo code SummoningsSalt for up to 37% off upon checkout. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring this video. The year is 2005. The main hub for speedrunning is a website called Speed Demos Archive. And over on the forums, a group of site members are discussing how to speedrun a relatively new game, The Simpsons Hit and Run. However, the conversation ultimately goes nowhere, and this begins a trend. Every few years, a new runner comes along and brings up speedrunning the game. And every time, they're told it simply wouldn't be a good game to speedrun. So, why? Well, forum goers in the mid-2000s identified 3 main problems. The first problem, they actually thought the game was too hard. Now, that's not totally unfounded. Simpsons Hit and Run has 7 levels, and each level has 7 missions to complete. Missions in the first few levels are pretty easy, but the last few levels do have some very tough missions. If you've played Simpsons Hit and Run, you probably remember the infamous missions Never Trust a Snake and Set to Kill. You also need to complete objectives under a time limit. Any slowdowns and you run out of time. You also need to avoid hit and runs. If you run into too many objects or pedestrians, the police come after you, potentially slowing you down and taking some of your coins. Speaking of, that was the second main problem, coins. You must collect 3,625 of them to unlock everything needed to beat the game. They're scattered all across the levels in boxes, machines, wasps, and other places. You have to go out of your way to collect enough of them, severely slowing down a speedrun. So, reasons The Simpsons Hit and Run is a bad speed game. There are too many coins, the game is too hard, and the game is too easy. Yeah. If you fail a mission 7 times, Hit and Run gives you the option to skip it and move on to the next one. So, for 3/4 of the game's missions, it's faster to just restart over and over and skip the mission, rather than actually playing it. That would make an any percent speedrun quite easy, and exceedingly boring. Because of all this, speedrunners ignored Simpsons Hit and Run for years. New forum threads would pop up and fizzle out without much attention. But speedrunning kept growing over the years. More people got into the hobby, and those runners looked for new games to run. And finally, in 2012, nearly a decade after its initial release, the first speedruns of The Simpsons Hit and Run were performed. A few runners played straight up any percent, where you were allowed to restart and skip missions. This led to some fairly boring runs, but there were still very talented players. Duke Bilgewater and Neke for President completed the first any percent runs of Hit and Run. But then, another more popular category began to form, The rule set for this category was that you had to complete all 49 story missions without skipping any. To this day, it remains the most popular category of The Simpsons Hit and Run, and it's called All Story Missions. Early runs were performed by runners Finja29 and Cookie. No videos of their world records survive, but they got times clocking in around 2 hours. The early hit and run community kept track of their times on a Google spreadsheet. Runners would simply post their fastest times to the board. It was a small and tight-knit community. And it's from this early community that we get our first world record with surviving video. The Simpsons Hit and Run in 1 hour and 54 minutes by Pessimistic Mango. Hit and Run is one of the most technical games I've ever covered on this channel. And it all started with the coin route. Mango had to find the best way to collect over 3,600 coins without wasting too much time. Certain missions had downtime built into them. For example, if he just had to follow a car around the map, he could drive around and collect coins himself, while making sure he stayed close enough to the car. But even on the other missions, Mango had to collect coins, and tried to do it whenever he happened to be near some. It was a balancing act, but he mapped his coin route out across the entire game. Then there's the tricks. Hit and Run has a lot of them. Some are quite basic, like mission warps. After finishing a mission, the game usually tells you to drive somewhere to begin the next one. But instead, by going to the menu after Mission Complete appears on the screen, you can select the next mission, and warp there straight away. Another basic piece of tech is car resets. You can reset your car at any time and it'll warp to the nearest main road. This can move you ahead a bit on the map, or just get you back on track quicker. That's the easy stuff. They're second nature to hit and run speedrunners. But Mango's run also had some sophisticated tricks, like Carl Skip. In the 7th mission of level 1, or 1-7, you're supposed to race Smithers to Mr. Burns' mansion. The intended route is to drive all the way around the map, but if you instead push Carl with your car past the power plant door, and then talk to him to initiate the race, the power plant door closes with you already past it. So, you can just quickly drive through the power plant to the mansion, and save about a minute on the speedrun. Other important parts of Mango's run were the destruction missions. There's several of these throughout the game. You have to destroy a car or multiple cars as quickly as you can by running into it over and over. Mango had some clever strategies for dealing damage quickly. In 6-5, where he had to destroy Skinner's car, he directed it against the wall and another car. It got stuck, and he was able to ram it over and over. But not all destruction missions went smoothly. In 1-3, for instance, he spent a lot of time trying to chase Smithers' car down and damage it. And finally, while Mango was a fantastic player, The Simpsons Hit and Run is still a hard game, especially at the end. In level 7, you have to deliver nuclear waste all the way across the map without accidentally blowing it up. In 7-5, a car swerved in front of Mango and blew up the waste, making him restart the mission. And in 7-7, he just grazed the edge of a tree, but it was enough to blow up the waste again, losing another chunk of time. And that was the run. An hour and 54 minutes later, Mango had beaten the game. It had its shortcomings, but overall this was a great starting point for hit and run speedruns. Mango knew he could do better, and he'd go on to lower the record a few more times in the following days, sadly not saving any of the videos. Finally, on May 29th, he got a run he was happy enough with to save. 1 hour and 50 minutes. It was a greatly cleaned up version of his hour 54 run. Nearly every level was faster. He got better at destroying vehicles quickly, and once again he had some brilliant strategies here. For instance, in 3-7, why destroy the limo yourself when you could get it stuck so it destroyed itself while you picked up coins? Mango's level 7 was cleaner too, blowing up the waste only once. But he had one notable time loss. He missed a big trick that we haven't talked about yet. The cutscene skip. The Simpsons Hit and Run has a handful of cutscenes. They play after certain missions, and there's no option to skip them. You have to watch them. Except, there's a trick you can do on 3 of the cutscenes. The ones after level 2, level 5, and level 6. After mission complete fades out, if you pause the game in a small window just before the cutscene starts, you can select the next mission and skip the cutscene entirely. You have a 9-frame window to skip the level 2 cutscene and a 16-frame window for levels 5 and 6. That's between a 20th of a second and a quarter of a second depending on your frame rate. You can also repeatedly pause to give yourself a better chance at hitting it. So all in all, cutscene skip doesn't seem that bad. But the problem is that it's super punishing if you miss. The level 6 cutscene lasts 45 seconds, the level 2 cutscene lasts 55 seconds, and the level 5 cutscene lasts a whopping 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So there's added pressure of knowing that if you miss one, it's a huge blow to your speedrun. And sure enough, in this run, Mango missed the level 6 cutscene skip. It was a 45-second time loss. Had he gotten it, it would have been a sub 150. Mango made that his goal time going forward, a run in the 140s. But it wasn't going to be easy, because Mango wasn't the only player who could get that time. In mid-2014, he got a competitor. Meet Pet Iguana. Mango had reason to be afraid, and not just because iguanas eat mangoes, but because on June 14th, Iguana got a run of 150.08, a new record and just 9 seconds from the sub 150. In true hit-and-run fashion, Iguana didn't highlight his run since he wasn't happy with it. But Mango and Iguana were neck and neck. They both wanted the sub 150, and they were both just seconds away. Who would get there first? On July 4th, 2014, Mango got a good chance. His run started with the fastest level 1 he'd ever performed. The next few levels were up and down, but crucially, he got all 3 cutscene skips, meaning he saved an additional 45 seconds. Mango entered level 7 on pace for a 149.58. It seemed like it was going to be close. But instead, Mango played his fastest ever level 7, and it was a blowout. 148.16, nearly a 147. The middle had its slowdowns, but Mango had started and finished his run incredibly strong. The ball was in Iguana's court. Could he compete with a 148? For a few months, he did struggle to beat Mango's run, but by that November, the tides had turned and he felt he had a great chance to pull it off. How come? Well, it all came down to destroying vehicles, where Iguana had some new strategies. The armored truck in 5-6 is one of the longest destruction missions in the game. It takes forever to be destroyed, especially with Snake's car, which isn't adept at dealing damage. It took Mango 2.5 minutes to destroy it in his 148, but here's what Iguana did. He guided it off the road so it got stuck against a pillar. It then damaged itself over time as it tried to escape, and Iguana destroyed it in under a minute. The armored truck strat would become one of the most pivotal strategies in the entire run. Miss it, and you have a big time loss. Another fast destruction strategy was in 1-3. Iguana steered Smithers' car into a house, then repeatedly hit it while stuck to destroy it quickly. A solid time save over Mango chasing the car down. But perhaps my favorite new strategy was in 4-7. Here, you have to escape Chief Wiggum by getting far enough away from him. But instead of driving far, Iguana just went inside the Simpsons house. And the mission ended, saving him 10+ seconds. This works because the inside of the house is located very far away from the rest of the map. So the game detects that you've escaped Wiggum and just ends the mission. Thanks to these new strategies, on November 17th, Iguana was able to pull 2 minutes ahead of the record going into level 7. But he wasn't out of the woods yet. Remember, he was up against Mango's gold split here, and he was 100 coins shy, meaning he'd have to pick up extra coins before buying the zombie car. Despite a big lead, this was going to be close. And most importantly, Iguana had to avoid blowing up the waste.
What's up by that pole? Oh, that was close. I definitely thought that blew up.
And what's more, both Chat and his roommates were heckling him.
Yeah, I'm gonna laugh so hard if you leave
Well, we have no idea what time this is. That could not even be close to world record.
That's harder than it is.
Yeah, we did it! Finally.
Iguana was back, and he didn't stop there. A couple months later, he improved the record again, down to 1 hour and 45 minutes. The worst part of this run was missing the armored truck strat in 5-6, but he had a much cleaner level 6 and 7, and used a new strategy in 3-3 to let him repeatedly hit Cletus's truck. So yeah, Iguana and Mango were just trading this record back and forth. The game's two best competitors, rivals that would clash for years to come. And maybe they would have, if someone else didn't come along. In early 2015, a runner named Liquid Wi-Fi became a record contender. He'd started running the game a few months prior, and by February 2015 had managed to lower his time down to a 148, a bit behind the world record of 145. But on February 20th, he shocked the hit and run community by doing, well, this. Exiting level 3, Liquid Wi-Fi was over a minute behind the world record, but that was a bit misleading. See, Liquid took a different coin route from most other runners. He chose to get more coins early in the run, so he didn't need to pick up as many in the later levels. So, he entered level 4 with a coin lead, and gained time by not having to pick up as many. By level 5, he was nearly even with the record. And although he too missed the armored truck strat, this was still barely on record pace going into level 7. But the missions started going well. He wasn't blowing up the waste, and this looked like it might actually have a chance at record. But then during the last mission, on his way to pick up the waste, he triggered a hit and run. And that was a problem. See, he still had to pick up the waste, where you effectively corner yourself. If the police caught him there, it was likely run over. Liquid had to find a way to evade capture.
Holy f***, I evaded them. Let's go. This is going to be seconds between me and world record. Oh my god, this is close. This is so close. Oh. Yes! Did I seriously just do that?
Liquid Wi-Fi was the new hit and run record holder. It wasn't a huge improvement, but a very strong last couple levels was enough to get it done. On the other hand, Iguana had just lost his record, and he wasn't going to stand for that. So, an hour after he saw his record had been beaten, Iguana booted up the game, started playing, and Liquid's record lasted just a few hours. Iguana had pushed the run to the next minute, a 1:44:37. Curiously, it was yet another world record that missed the armored truck strat, this time thanks to a car getting in the way. And as a whole, it was a very up and down run. He got a few strategies that Liquid missed, like Smithers' car in 1-3, but there were still obvious time saves that he missed out on. Bottom line, Liquid and Iguana both knew they could do better. So they kept playing. Around this time, Liquid began implementing a new piece of tech into his runs, e-brake boosting. Hit and Run has three main driving buttons: accelerate, reverse, and e-brake. By holding all three at once, then letting go of reverse, and then letting go of e-brake, you get a huge acceleration boost forward. This is particularly useful if you have to hit something over and over. In 3-3, for instance, when you have to hit Cletus's truck to collect 15 items, you can see how e-brake boosting lets you get in more hits over time. Over the following few months, the big three runners would all set new records. In late February, Liquid got a 142.19.
Oh!
In April, Mango got a 142.03. And in May, Iguana got a 140.49.
Oh, baby.
These guys were all about equal in skill, and with all three of them actively playing, the world record was plummeting. Much of the time save came from the margins, rather than actual new strategies. Cleaner driving, faster destructions, that sort of thing. Their overall skill level was rising, and nobody was sure where the ceiling was. So who would come through next? Well, in November 2015, it was Mango setting a new world record. And this run has an important distinction. It was the first world record with load times removed. See, Hit and Run has to load in between missions, and this can take a variable amount of time. Depending on how powerful the runner's PC is, this can add up to multiple minutes of difference across the run. So, the community created the Load Remover Auto Splitter. It detects when Hit and Run is loading and automatically pauses the timer. So, when Mango beat Iguana's world record, it was initially timed as a 1:40:41, but using loads removed time, it was a 1:40:05. This run also featured another big new strategy, car despawning. By flicking the camera angle back and then forward, certain objects like cars and pedestrians despawn. This can move things out of your way, or more importantly, out of the way of an AI-controlled vehicle. They'll crash into fewer cars, saving you time on the speedrun overall. Mango's run lasted for 8 days, when the next member of the Big Three struck, Iguana, who got a 1:38:35 and then a 1:38:03. It was a mix of faster execution and some strategy improvements. He had a new coin route, picking up more coins in level 4 to collect Skinner's car in Krusty Lou Studios. He destroyed vehicles, saved a lot of time in 6-4, picked up about 45 seconds and saved time on the armored truck and the hit and destroy missions were cleaner overall. Phew, it's exhausting to keep track of everything that was happening, and these guys still weren't at their limits. Since 2014, it had been a 3-way competition between Mango, Iguana, and Liquid for the Simpsons Hit and Run world record. They constantly traded it back and forth among themselves, but nobody else ever broke through to take it from them. They were the 3 best runners of the game by far, an exclusive club at the top with only 3 members. The combination of new strategies being added, with the world record frequently changing hands, makes this a tough timeline to follow. But luckily for us, someone was about to come along and simplify things a bit. In mid-2016, a player named Robot Crocodiles appeared on the scene. He took one look at our 3 world record holders and spat on them. Over the course of several months, Croc single-handedly took 5 minutes off the Hit and Run world record. Unfortunately, all of his videos were deleted, so we can't watch any of them today, but we do have an idea of what they looked like. Croc more or less revolutionized the game. Were there new strategies? Well, of course there were, and he used them to his full advantage. In 1-7, Croc used Carl Skip. Instead of running over Carl, he simply reversed to the door and reset his car. The game's default reset point here is right at the door entry, so you respawn halfway past the door. You can then continue reversing and make it all the way through. Faster and more consistent than Carl Skip. Croc also switched vehicles for a couple missions. In 1-3, instead of using Homer's sedan, he used a traffic car that dealt more damage. Similarly, in 3-4, he switched out Mr. Plow for the school bus. Another big one was in 4-1, a strat called Donut Fire. You're supposed to hit the donut truck 10 times and collect the items, and the strategy here used to be letting it hit you 10 times. But instead, Croc began guiding it into a corner and then hitting it over and over. This was both faster and much safer than the old strat, as you get rid of RNG when traffic gets in the way. But Croc's dominance was from more than just new strats. It's also because he'd raised the bar for his execution. See, Croc began by grinding individual levels instead of full game runs. He got good at them, eventually holding every IL record in the game. This gave him a mastery of each individual mission that nobody else had. He was able to pick up minutes across the run just from better driving. He slowed down less overall and took cleaner lines. Croc lowered the record a lot in a short period of time. He'd pulled away from the runners behind him, and he was undoubtedly the best player the game had ever seen. Sadly, a few months after these runs, Croc disappeared, taking his channels and videos with him. Today, it's impossible to watch any of his records. It's really too bad. Because if he'd stuck around, he might have been able to prevent what happened next. In late May 2017, someone finally broke through to take the record from Croc. Our old friend Liquid Wi-Fi. This was his first record in more than 2 years. His new time was 1:32:44, but in the description, he said lots of mistakes in this run. And there were a bunch of them, adding up to at least a couple minutes of obvious time save. But still, Croc had raised the bar for execution, and now Liquid had matched it. One other thing Liquid said in the description, I think sub 130 is possible. Well, right around this time, Liquid Wi-Fi began streaming full time, playing Simpsons Hit and Run for several hours every day. And he got so good that he took over our story.
Alright. Oh, dude. Oh. Okay. Are you kidding me? What?
He set 12 records in 4 months. He took the record from 132 to a 129.44. How did Liquid do this? Well, lots of tiny optimizations added up. He went for a lot more car despawns from previous runners, helping his AI vehicles a bit more. He also had a new coin route, collecting the Krusty Loo coins in the middle of the 3-2 mission to skip coins later. And most importantly, Liquid had just gotten good. The leaderboard was pretty staggering. Liquid had a 129, Croc had a 132, and nobody else had below a 135. How long could this go on for?
Yes! Yeah, baby!
Make it 18 straight records for Liquid Wi-Fi. This man was unstoppable. Most of his improvement was just from getting better and better at the game. He still wasn't at his full potential. And yet, here he was with a 3-minute lead over second place. Yes, Liquid was streaming full time and playing more than anybody else, but he was also clearly the best runner by far. He'd taken over the game. This was his record now. And at this rate, with Liquid being this dominant, there needs to be some major change to the run for anybody to catch him. We've seen a lot of strategy improvements in the game already. Every year there's been new glitches, destruction strategies, and more. But in late 2018, the Simpsons Hit and Run had perhaps its greatest strategy change yet. Level 7, the final level of the game, got completely overhauled. It's time to head out of bounds. First off, what's the point of going out of bounds? How does it save time? Well, the main advantage is it lets you drive across the map while it's not loaded in. You can go in a straight line without needing to turn or slow down at all. And level 7 is perfect for this, because most missions require you to go all the way across the map. You pick up waste on one side and drop it off on the other. Next question is, how do you get out of bounds? Well, in October 2018, Liquid Wi-Fi found this method. It looks crazy, but cars in Simpsons Hit and Run can essentially grip onto vertical walls if they touch them. So, by crashing into the wall, Liquid's car bounced and the tires hit the vertical wall. And from there, he simply drove up the invisible part and made it over. He later found a more consistent version, using the car's back tires to contact the wall.
Oh my god!
From there, it was over for level 7. DJ Lambton found an out-of-bounds setup for 7-3 that involved climbing the walls of the power plant. Vapo found a similar setup for 7-5. And then Liquid found another in 7-7. And before they knew it, more than half of level 7's missions had an out-of-bounds. Combined, they saved more than a minute, but they weren't easy to pull off, especially given that they're at the very end of an hour-and-a-half long run. If you mess these up, there goes your whole speedrun. But Liquid felt he was up to the task. He began chipping away at his world record with these new tricks. Every few weeks he got a new improvement, first getting a 127 and eventually a 126. Ironically, even though new tricks often open the door to new competition, level 7 out of bounds actually had the opposite effect. Liquid was the only runner with good consistency at them, so he was able to better implement them, and his world record lead only increased. It was now up to a whopping 4.5 minutes. His run of 126.23 was the first to hit all 4 out of bounds in level 7, and that was enough to satisfy Liquid. He got all the big tricks and had an enormous lead over second place. What else could he ask for? I mean, maybe he'd come back if more out of bounds were discovered, like a second wave or something, but there was no way that could happen. Liquid couldn't stop now. In mid-2019, he helped find another set of out of bounds in level 7. This time, he was going to be out of bounds for nearly the entire level. It's a pretty involved route, but the most interesting part starts from 7-5. Liquid put the waste in a traffic car, then left it and hopped back in a sports car he had waiting out of bounds. He then quickly drove straight to the school, and the waste magically appeared there. How? Well, since the game can only have 5 traffic cars loaded at once, it simply duplicates the traffic car with the waste as one of the 5. So, once it shows up by the school, it's perfectly cloned from before, waste and all. Liquid then simply got in the traffic car and completed the mission. Finally, in 7-6, he drove to the power plant out of bounds while being careful not to load in any part of the map. Then he did an e-brake boost to make it past the bridge, collected the waste, and drove back to the school out of bounds. This 7-6 strategy was found by Barcode and was huge because now you could avoid the painfully difficult 7-7 out of bounds. The new route was about a minute faster than before, so Liquid knew what he had to do next: get back to the record grind. In June 2019, he rattled off 4 records like it was nothing, achieving the first ever 124.
Let's go!
Then in September, he came back and took another minute off. He'd implemented all the tricks into his run and grinded it down to a 123.37. He was still in first place by a mile, no other runners in sight. This was getting ridiculous. Liquid Wi-Fi was clearly the king of hit and run, and with nothing left to prove here, he once again moved on to other games and categories. And it was during that break that something amazing happened. Something that hadn't occurred in years. An event that people weren't sure was possible anymore. In early 2020, Liquid Wi-Fi got a competitor. This is Bacon Man. He started running the game about a year ago, and he had a meteoric rise, quickly becoming the best runner not named Liquid Wi-Fi. But he always remained comfortably behind him, not a threat to his world record. Then suddenly in late 2019, he started improving again. His 126 became a 125, and then a 124 by January 2020. This was the first time that anybody had been within a minute of Liquid Wi-Fi. And interestingly, Bacon Man was already 43 seconds behind after level 2. Across the final 5 levels, he only lost 12 seconds to Liquid Wi-Fi. And in the final 2 levels, he actually gained time. Bacon Man was the first person to approach Liquid Wi-Fi's level. He wasn't quite there yet, but he was clearly on a collision course. Maybe this was it. A new era of hit and run speedrunning was finally approaching. one with actual competition at the top level. Nope. New world record from Liquid. New world record from Liquid. New world record from Liquid.
Yes, we did!
New world record from Liquid. New world record from Liquid. Hey, some new strategies in level 7. New world record from Liquid. New world record from Liquid. New world record from Liquid. This just kept going. He was still the king, squashing any threat from other runners. And by the end of the year, the record was down to an unthinkable 120-20. He was making a mockery of the leaderboard. This was 36 consecutive world records from Liquid Wi-Fi. And the record had become very optimized. He was running out of time to save. But before he quit the game forever, Liquid Wi-Fi still wanted to get one more record, the ultimate time in the Simpsons hit and run. We're talking about the sub 120. All of Liquid's world records, all of his domination, it all led up to this. This would be his crowning achievement. But it was not going to be easy. He needed to find a way to save 21 seconds over his current world record. And most of that potential time save was in the first two levels. Level 1 had some recent new strategies, like using the Plow King in 1.3 and the Bush strat in the tutorial. There was also a really cool new one in 3.7. By pushing the limo to a precise spot, then calling in Mr. Plow, the two cars share the same collision area and the limo is instantly destroyed. These time saves could really help him. Liquid's goal would be to build some kind of a lead after level 2, then maintain it as best he could until the end. And maybe that would be good enough for sub 120. In early 2021, Liquid embarked on his journey. On March 5th, he got a run with the start he was looking for, a 16-second lead after level 2. He maintained his lead through level 3, and then he entered level 4. 4-7 is one of the most important missions in the run. You have to destroy 3 cola trucks as fast as possible, and each one has its own unique strategy. If you miss a quick kill, you could lose big time and potentially even lose the run. Liquid entered the cola trucks mission with an 18-second lead, and it went beautifully. He nailed all 3 quick kills and took a 23-second lead into level 5. Things were looking good. But now he had another crucial mission coming up, the armored truck. On this golden opportunity, he had to get the strat.
Yes, this is definitely spliced. You caught me. 100%. Alright, that'll work.
He nailed it again. Liquid now had a 27-second lead. This was sub 120 pace with 2 levels to go. Level 6 had a clean start, but then in 6-6, mistakes began to creep in.
That is not fast as fuck.
Oops.
Okay, well that's gonna affect the cycle. Very nice. I would like to stop losing time, please.
His lead fell to 14 seconds. This still had sub 120 potential, but now there was no margin for error. And with the pressure fully on, he had to hit all of level 7's out of bounds. 7-2 went well, as did 7-4. This was alive. Liquid was on sub 120 pace. 3 more missions. Whatever he did now, just don't blow up the waste.
Sub 120 is dead.
This was such a tricky spot. You have to get enough speed to get the front of the car to bounce up, but too much speed and the waist explodes, which is exactly what happened. It lost just enough time to cost him sub 120. The run finished as a 120.05. The grind continued for weeks. Liquid kept getting runs to level 7, but he messed up an out of bounds mission every time. It's so tough when the hardest part of the speedrun is right at the end. Liquid pushed onwards, and a few weeks later, he got another shot. This one again had a good start, despite some minor slowdowns. The cola trucks went well, and now for perhaps the most important mission in the run, the armored truck.
No!
That should work.
A car tried to prevent it, but Liquid still managed to trap the truck. He had a 3-second lead with time to save in level 7. Once again, this had sub 120 potential. First step, get 7-2 out of bounds.
Please go. Please make it. Okay, that's fine.
It was sketchy, but it worked. He also got 7-4 out of bounds, but his lead was only 4 seconds. Not enough for sub 120. But he had time to save in 7-5, if he could avoid blowing up the waste again.
Get up! Get up!
He did it. Liquid pulled further ahead, closed out the last 2 missions, and beat the game in sub 120. It was pure elation for a man who devoted his past 4 years to this game. This was the run he'd been dreaming of. All 38 world records had built up to this, and Liquid Wi-Fi had finally made it. He'd done everything he'd wanted with all story missions, and this was the end of the road. For the first time in many years, Liquid stopped playing the category. He moved on to other ones, with his sub 120 as his crowning achievement. Meanwhile, Liquid's top competitors were still well behind. Bacon Man was the closest with a low 121, and nobody else had below a 123. These guys weren't really considered world record contenders, so there wasn't much hope of beating Liquid's 119. But maybe, given enough time, somebody could rise up to compete. Well, let's jump a year later. Barely anything had changed. Bacon Man had lowered his time by 12 seconds, and that was about it. No world record threats in sight, and it was now the longest standing world record in modern hit and run history. Liquid was one of a kind. Others simply couldn't do what he could, and if he wasn't running the category, the world record was staying put. By mid-2022, he hadn't played all story missions in a year and a half, unprecedented for him. It had been part of his identity for years, and now he'd given it up. Liquid took a step back and evaluated what he wanted to do. He already had the 119, the ultimate hit and run world record, and yet he missed playing it. Liquid evaluated his options. He looked at his world record of 119 and said, "Alright, fine. One more minute." In Liquid's mind, the 119 was about the achievement, while a 118 would be about the optimization. He'd gotten even better over the last year and a half, and felt there was another minute he could squeeze out of the run. But where? Well, let's examine his 119. There were only a couple of big time losses. In 2.7, he got bad traffic that cost him 10 seconds. And in 5.6, he wasted a bunch of time by forgetting which coins to collect. But with cleaner execution, there were small chunks of time he could save all over. He missed items in level 3, certain destruction missions could be a bit faster, his out of bounds were a bit slow. When adding this all up across the run, it came out to over a minute of time save. 118 was technically viable, but this was going to take a monumental effort. His 119 was already an incredible run. He'd have to duplicate it, and capitalize on all the time save. This was the sort of thing he'd chip away at over time, rather than get all in one shot. Or maybe I'm a big dummy.
Oh my god, what is this face? Oh my god, what the heck? Oh my god, okay, alright. Gotta focus up. He's gotta focus up.
How about a 48-second lead into level 7? Liquid could not believe what was happening. I mean, he'd gotten everything. All the time save he was hoping for. If he could now play a clean level 7, he'd get a 118 right here, right now. This was the highest pressure level 7 of his life. The first mission is in bounds, and it went just fine. Next up, the 7-2 E-brake boost. He had to make it out of bounds here.
No! Interna.
He hit the corner of the Krusty Burger roof, and it was enough to kill 118. He had to go out of bounds in 7-3 instead, costing him serious time. Liquid went on to hit the rest of the out of bounds and got a small world record, 119.45. But most importantly, he got a small taste of what could be. If he had hit the 7-2 out of bounds, this run very well could have been the 118. Perhaps getting it all in one shot was just too much to ask for. Instead, he was going to have to grind this out the traditional way. On September 15th, he had a run even with the record after level 4, a great spot to be in. But in level 5, the time losses began. He had a slow 5-4, and in 5-5, a car got in the way of the truck so it couldn't turn on the expressway. Level 7 mostly went well, but he initially messed up the 7-5 out of bounds. It ended as a world record by 10 seconds, 119.35. Weeks later, he had another solid start. A gold split in level 3 pushed him even with the record, and he was able to capitalize on a level 5 time save. 7-2 went well, 7-5 went well, and then he messed up 7-6. Another small world record, but Liquid was struggling to get a clean level 7. On December 20th, he made it there again. This time he was faster through level 4, but got unlucky in level 5. Level 7 started beautifully, and then...
I thought I got stuck on the wall.
Another failed out of bounds, and another small world record. Liquid just couldn't get the level 7 he needed. Something always went wrong. But fortunately for him, around the end of the year, another wave of new strategies were developed. The entirety of level 4 was rerouted, buying the inmate outfit sooner and changing which coins you pick up. And a runner named Bedge found a time save in 4-3 to collect the last ketchup packet quicker. But the biggest new strategy came in the final mission of the game, 7-7 Jump Zone, found by an annoying hamster. By parking your car in a precise spot, then exiting and re-entering it, the car gains Jump Zone properties. This gives it unlimited top speeds and bouncy physics. It allows you to quickly climb the power plant wall after collecting the waste, then drive out of bounds to the end, a 20 to 25 second time save. So now Liquid had a bit more time to work with, but if he couldn't get a clean level 7, it didn't matter. On January 8th, he got another record of 119.19. It had a good level 7, but a slower levels 3 and 5. He needed that level 7 on a faster pace. And on January 30th, he'd get that faster pace. Liquid had a 16-second lead. He had another shot. If he could get a clean level 7 now, this was 118. And things were looking good. He got 7-2, he got 7-4, he got 7-5, and he got 7-6. One more green split, and Liquid would have a 118. But Liquid didn't get a green split in 7-7. He got a gold split, his fastest 7-7 ever.
Yes! Oh my god! Finally! Let's go!
After 2 years, Liquid had found another minute to squeeze out of Simpsons Hit and Run, above and beyond what anyone thought was possible. His hours of being stuck in level 1, his repeated fails in level 7, it all finally paid off. Liquid Wi-Fi had the 118. Make it more than 40 world records in a row, and his leaderboard dominance had only grown. Now, he could celebrate and move on to the game's other categories once again, with the comfort that he was truly done with all story missions. But his comfort didn't last long, because while he was still celebrating, just hours after his 118, something happened. Something to make Liquid just a little unsure of himself. Later that same day as Liquid's 118, a player named Homer of Steel became the second ever person to get a sub 120. Homer of Steel played a lot of hit and run growing up. He always loved it and poured countless hours into the game. But in 2021, he found Liquid Wi-Fi's Twitch stream and became obsessed with learning the speedrun. It was a story like so many who start speedrunning. He found a speedrun of a childhood game and wanted to see if he could do it too. But Liquid's dominance of the leaderboard was intimidating. 6 years on top, 45 consecutive records? How could anybody ever catch up? But Homer of Steel kept lowering his time, and as he got closer, Liquid's times began to seem a bit more realistic. On January 30th, he took his PB straight from a high 121 to a 119.53. He was 23 seconds behind the record after level 2, and then lost another 30 seconds in level 7. But in levels 3 through 6, more than half of the run, Homer of Steel only lost 4 seconds to Liquid. If he could improve at the level 7 out of bounds, maybe he could finally be the person to challenge Liquid for the world record. It took a huge grind for Homer of Steel to get the sub 120, and he took a break for a few months after this. But in May, he came back, determined to try and close the minute gap between himself and Liquid. Everything was in position for him to make a run at the world record, and he actually had a decent chance at pulling this off. But instead, right after he began playing, a new strategy was found that changed everything. This is the 5-3 Baby Van. You need to hit it 10 times to collect 10 objects, similar to several other missions in the run. But the Baby Van has one key difference. It has a 50-50 chance of either driving normally or driving all over the place in a crazy pattern. With normal driving, you can trap the car in the corner and get a quick kill. But with tilted driving, this is nearly impossible, so you had to chase it down and hit it 10 times normally. This often cost a full half minute. For years, it was just a random coin flip. You either got lucky, or your run was pretty much over. But in June 2023, Homer of Steel modified a new strategy originally developed by a runner named Vapo. See, the Baby Van mission won't start unless your vehicle is the car built for Homer. So, you buy the car, then exit and reselect the mission to spawn in with your old car. By then waiting to call in the car built for Homer until you're right next to the Baby Van, the mission will start and you can immediately ram the Baby Van before it gets away. This was huge for the speedrun. Now, regardless of which pattern the Baby Van gave, you could always get the quick kill. No more having to throw away half of your runs. Easily one of the biggest discoveries in hit and run history. And it led to a flurry of activity like the game had never seen before. On June 24th, Homer of Steel had a brilliant pace midway through the game. All the big missions had gone well, including the 3 cola trucks in 4-7. The new Baby Van strat worked perfectly, and he capitalized on a big time save in 5-7. After a good level 6, he was actually ahead of the world record. It was about to happen so soon. If he could hold it together for one more level, he was about to dethrone Liquid Wi-Fi. And then... he missed a cutscene skip. We haven't seen this happen in several years. It's such an easy trick compared to the rest of the run, but under immense pressure, it's still possible to miss it. He lost 45 seconds, and then proceeded to play an excellent level 7, finishing with a 119.19. The missed cutscene skip ended up making all the difference. He was just one relatively easy trick from taking down Liquid. But Homer of Steel wasn't the only player trying. Later the same week as his run, 2 more players achieved sub-120s of their own.
190, there we go.
12 Kelvin and Bacon Man, veteran runners who had long been just a bit behind Liquid on the leaderboard, got runs clocking in at 119.56 and 119.57. The new Baby Van strat had revolutionized the run, and coincided with runners making a big push to lower their PBs. The end result? Now 3 runners had joined Liquid in the sub-120 club. For his part, Liquid was thrilled by all the activity. It had gotten lonely at the top after all these years, and he was excited to see multiple new record contenders. He also made the decision to hold off on playing more all-story missions until somebody beat his world record. It'd be more fun for him to play from behind. So, now it was inevitable that his world record streak was about to come to an end, and it was a race to see who would pull it off first. On July 1st, Kelvin swooped into second place with a 1:19.10.
Oh my god. What? What? Holy sh...
This run fell 20 seconds behind the record after level 3, but from there he matched it all the way to the end. A few days later, Homer of Steel fired back with a 6-second PB of his own. At this point, these guys were saving substantial time in level 7 compared to Liquid's world record. Both Kelvin and Homer of Steel have been grinding it as an IL to try and get a sub 8, so their execution at each out of bounds got really fast. Later in August, Homer of Steel had a run that pulled ahead in level 3 thanks to a very fast destruction mission. However, he had some slowdowns in level 5, including missing the new baby van strat. With one level to go, he was 3 seconds behind the world record, but he knew he could beat Liquid's level 7. He had to learn from his mistakes in past runs and apply all his skills right now. Homer of Steel's final time? 1:18.48, a new world record by 3 seconds. This was the first time since May 2017 that Liquid wasn't the record holder. Over that period, he'd taken the time down by 14 minutes, more than 6 years of constant domination. But all reigns come to an end eventually, and Homer of Steel's achievement was lauded by the community. It was surreal to see a new name on top of the leaderboard. So, what was Liquid's response? Was he interested in playing? Well, everything quieted down for a few months. Nobody was sure if Liquid was planning to come back, or if he was just done with the category. Homer of Steel's record was great, but it did have room for improvement, especially on the baby van. And under the pressure of world record pace, he didn't play level 7 as aggressively as he could have either. But even though there was some time save, the community stayed quiet. Nobody wanted to make a move. Finally, in late 2023, activity picked up again. A massive push for the world record. And what we've had over the last year of hit and run speedrunning is a battle like we've never seen in the game's history. Three contenders began playing for the world record, each one formidable in their own way. The first contender was the current record holder, Homer of Steel. Even though he held the record, he wanted to hang on to it and begin his own long-lasting reign. The second contender was Liquid Wi-Fi. He knew the record left time on the table and felt that with his experience, he'd be the one to save it. The third contender was Kelvin. He'd contended for the record right alongside Homer of Steel, and although he was narrowly beaten out, Kelvin felt he had what it took to get it. That's three contenders: the record holder, the past champion, and the up-and-comer. It seemed like Liquid and Homer of Steel were the two favorites, given that they'd actually held the record before. But as the runs played out, Kelvin was looking pretty good. On December 30th, Kelvin had a decent run going, but had a very slow first cola truck destruction. Luckily, he could save time over the record's baby van, and he capitalized on it. His pace was very close with the record, and by the time he reached level 7, he was just a few seconds behind. If he could play a bit more aggressively than the record here, he could save some time and take the top spot. Level 7 began, and Kelvin was hitting everything. Good driving, good out of bounds setups, he was in position to pull ahead of the record. And then...
Man, I was like a pixel off.
He hit an invisible wall while out of bounds. The waist blew up and it was all over. Just one tiny mistake in level 7 can completely destroy your run. But Kelvin was still feeling it. A short while later, he managed a nearly identical pace, about 10 seconds behind the world record going into level 7. Once again, with fast execution, he'd be able to pull ahead. First step, make it out of bounds in 7-2. No problem. Now, avoid hitting the invisible wall again. He got that too. So far, so good. A few more missions to go. Next up was 7-4 out of bounds.
That's good.
He made it. The pressure was mounting. Then, 7-5 out of bounds.
That sucks.
He blew up the waist again. Too much speed while backing up. World record was dead, but maybe he could still get a small personal best, as long as he didn't blow up the waist again.
That's...
This was becoming a pattern for Kelvin. He was getting runs to level 7 just like any record contender, but time and time again, something went wrong to kill it. It's tough when the game's hardest level is right at the end, but it's what you have to overcome if you want the record. On January 22nd, Kelvin found himself in a familiar spot. A few seconds behind the record, 1 level to go. And this time, it all went well. He didn't blow up the waist, he didn't miss any out of bounds, he played a clean level 7. But he still missed the record. Kelvin just wasn't quite aggressive enough through the level. He just wanted to get through it and take a new personal best. So he did. Now, all 3 top contenders had a 118. And they were all trying to break through. A day later, it was Liquid Wi-Fi's turn for a chance at the record. He exited level 4 with a 15-second deficit, but as we know, there's time to save over the record's level 5. Liquid capitalized on it, nailing the baby van strat, the armored truck strat, and everything else. Now, instead of being behind, he had a 20-second lead over the record.
Well, this has potential.
Once again, this was going to come down to level 7. First up, 7-2. A good start. Liquid now had a 30-second lead. Next up, 7-4.
Oh! I only just cleared the barrier.
It worked. Liquid was still 30 seconds ahead of the record. Now, he had to get 7-5.
That's fine. As long as I get it next time, it's okay.
That hurt. His lead was back down to 20 seconds. Still in there, as long as he could get 7-6.
It's probably dead.
Ouch. Liquid had to get a backup, and he lost another 17 seconds. But this still left him with a small lead, and with a clean 7-7, it was just enough to take the world record back from Homer of Steel. 118.41. Liquid was back on top, where he'd been for so many years. Homer of Steel had briefly taken it, and Kelvin put up a good fight too. But at the end of the day, Liquid was still too good to be stopped.
Look at that! We beat the French, boy! We beat the French! Yay!
So, how did our other competitors respond? Well, Homer of Steel kept going. He was determined to not be a one and done, to prove that he belonged on top of the leaderboard. But beating Liquid Wi-Fi was always a tall order. I mean, this was the same guy who'd set 45 records in a row. Sure, Homer of Steel beat him once, but now he was back in second place. The big question was, did he have what it took to beat him again? Well, here's a good benchmark. Liquid's record had a 110 flat split going into level 7. If Homer of Steel could be close to that, he could save time over the level 7 mistakes and beat the world record. So somewhere in the 110s was a good time to shoot for. And on the very next day after Liquid's record, Homer of Steel had a run make it past level 6. His split was 109.12.
Okay.
It was a dream run. Homer of Steel had gotten everything. The destruction missions, all the different tricks, everything. Virtually no mistakes. This was somehow on pace for a 117. Chat was losing their minds. Even Kelvin was there, and he couldn't believe what he was watching. Surely, something was gonna go wrong to kill this. But he began hitting all the out of bounds. He kept his pace. Just please don't blow up the waist.
What? Please. What? Please. Oh no. I hate this game. I want to cry. I can do this trick.
That's 8 times he blew up the waist. He just couldn't do it. And the best pace the game had ever seen was gone. The 117 dream was dead. But in speedrunning, you can't dwell on your mistakes. You have to pick yourself up and keep trying. That's exactly what Homer of Steel did. And a few days later, he had another good run. He had a lead over the record going into level 5, then hit the baby van strat. Things were looking good. But then, a complete debacle happened in 5-5. He managed to get his car stuck on a slant midway into the mission. The car wasn't budging, and he wasn't able to get back inside. So to wedge it free, he had to go get another car and repeatedly hit it to try and dislodge it. It eventually worked and he was able to proceed with the mission, but not before losing a full 30 seconds. This was a bizarre time loss, but here's the crazy part. Homer of Steel made it to level 7, hit all the out of bounds, and still set a massive new world record, 1:18:11, beating Liquid by half a minute. If he hadn't had the 5-5 time loss, this run would have been well into the 117s. Homer of Steel had turned into a monster. His competitors weren't able to get paces like this. He'd pulled away from both of them. And now, with its possibility being firmly established, Homer of Steel set his eyes on a new goal. He wanted the first 117 in hit and run history. The blueprint was simple, just duplicate the last record but with a cleaner 5-5. And 6 days later, that's exactly what Homer of Steel did. He had a small lead into level 5, got the big time save in 5-5, and maintained from there to the end. 117:41. The first 117 ever, and a full minute ahead of second place. Homer of Steel hadn't just won the world record battle, he'd completely run away with it. These were times that his competitors weren't even approaching. How had he gotten so good? Well, it was a lot of little things adding up. He was just a little bit faster at executing the hard tricks. His driving was just a little bit cleaner. Perhaps he saved 1 second on average per mission. Well, across 50 missions, that starts to add up. And that's why he was able to save so much more time. Even though Liquid had several years of head start, Homer of Steel had come along and surpassed him. So now, things were settled, and instead of playing all story missions, the top competitors moved to play the game's other categories, like 100%, where Liquid Wi-Fi had been able to hold off Homer of Steel. All story missions had little activity. Liquid just seemed unable to catch the 117. But once again, there's someone we're forgetting about. Kelvin had still never gotten the world record, and it wasn't for lack of trying. He'd had more than his share of runs into level 7, but they hadn't panned out, and now that the record was down to a 117, he remained in a fairly distant third place. But maybe now that his two competitors were distracted, this was his chance to make a move. On June 16th, Kelvin got a 118:38, just beating out Liquid for second place. And the very next day, he got on another run. Kelvin was deadlocked with the record into level 3. He lost some time in 3-5 when Snake's car jumped the bridge before dropping the last item, making him have to backtrack. He also lost a bit on the second cola truck in 4-7. Kelvin was now half a minute behind the record. But from there, he kept it remarkably close. He got the baby van, the armored truck, Skinner's car destruction, all just like the record. Finally, he made it to level 7, and he nailed all the out of bounds, with even quicker setups than the world record. The run finished as a 118:07.
I'm insane. What?
The only difference between his run and Homer of Steel's were unforced errors in levels 3 and 4. But beyond that, his execution was just as fast. Even faster in level 7. After several months of trying, Kelvin was once again on a collision course with the record. One more improvement without the big mistakes, and he would finally reach the top of the mountain. But it was all a mirage, because Homer of Steel saw what was happening, and he wanted to stop it. So he began doing attempts again, and a few days later, he did this. Homer of Steel had somehow squeezed another minute out of the run. Virtually the only slowdown was missing the Curator destruction in 5-7. He got a quick backup and lost 10 seconds. Other than that, it's a familiar story. He simply nailed everything, hitting trick after trick throughout the game. He now had a 116 when no one else in the world had a 117. What Homer of Steel has done to the hit and run speedrun is nothing short of remarkable. Compared to where the run was just a year ago, he's elevated nearly everything. He's brought the record down by 2 full minutes with essentially nothing new. He's just pulling time out of thin air, finding tiny optimizations to play better and better. This is well illustrated through the sum of best gap. A player's sum of best is adding up all their gold splits, their 50 fastest individual splits. During the 118 era, the gap between the record and his sum of best segments was 4 minutes. But now, Homer of Steel has shaved a full minute off that gap. His execution in runs has just gotten that good. Can other runners catch up to him? Well, in the months since, both Liquid Wi-Fi and Kelvin have set new personal bests. But they both remain more than a minute off the record. They're more competitive with Homer of Steel in categories like 100%, but he seems to have a stranglehold on all story missions. That being said, we've seen this before in the Simpsons hit and run. Someone seems so far ahead, surely there's no way anyone will catch up. But it never lasts forever. Someday, someone will dethrone Homer of Steel. And as it so often does, history will repeat itself. Thanks for watching. For a behind-the-scenes look at how I made this video and storylines that I couldn't include, join my Patreon page. I only charge when I upload a video. Thanks.